MultiGreen, building attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily real estate through impact investing.
Welcome to the MultiGreen podcast. I'm your host, Randy Norton, and today we'll be speaking with Bill Eimicke, board member at IX Investments and co-founder and executive director of the Picker Center at Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs. Bill was the very first person to influence the MultiGreen journey, and his book, Social Value Investing, is at the very top of my book pile. He is uniquely equipped to discuss profit with a purpose. Enjoy our conversation. Bill, thank you for being with us today. I think the last time I saw you was at the New York Stock Exchange on March 11th or so of this year when you and I presented to the IX shareholders. It was amazing.
It was. I mean, I was born in New York City, and I've been here on and off most of my life. And still the tourist attractions like the New York Stock Exchange and the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty still excite me, just like I was a little kid. So the idea of us having an annual shareholders meeting right in the heart of Wall Street was, I thought, very exciting. And I actually think all of our shareholders found the same excitement.
That was amazing. And I'm so grateful that we had that chance. And I think the next day I was on the very next plane out of New York City because of COVID-19.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God. Yep.
So it's been quite the year. But there was even one more special event that happened between you and I that I want to share with the listeners. And I am frequently asked about the origin story of MultiGreen. How did this come about? And each time you need to know that you are at the very center of it. Can I explain?
Please.
So in the fall of 2018, I don't know if you remember this, but you presented at the Stanford University Global Project Center, where many single-family offices and institutional investors were gathered in attendance. And after your presentation, I was speaking with Steve Oyer, who I had known for quite some time, and we were at the refreshments table outside. And I told Steve Oyer that there was one person at this entire conference that I wanted to meet, and it was you, Bill Eimicke. And Steve said something to the effect where, he was like, well, Randy, you are in luck because he is standing right next to you. Randy meet Bill, Bill meet Randy, and we just hit it off. Do you remember that?
I do. I remember it vividly, and I was struck immediately. Don't blush, but our listeners won't be able to see. With your incredible energy. That was the first thing that struck me. You had such high energy, such enthusiasm, and you were articulate in it. So it wasn't just bubbly. I mean, you knew what you wanted to do. And as I think we've both come to know, we share this passion for providing affordable housing, which is, on my list, there are like 5 things that we need to do to really make the world what it should be. And they're climate change, which you're also working on, healthcare for all, education for all, a living wage for all, and affordable housing. If we could do those things, and at least in our partnership, we're going to do one of them really well. Maybe 2 of them really well, at least.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what?
At least.
You know what? Part of what I see about MultiGreen is that it also deals with education and healthcare and employment. It's all part of the MultiGreen story. And somebody said to me, well, it's great. It seems like a wonderful idea, and you guys are smart and you know what you're doing. But, after all, it's just a real estate thing. And I said, no. It's a lot more than that. And maybe today in our discussion, we'll get to it's a lot more than that.
Absolutely. Well, I want to fast forward almost 3 years now since that meeting. Green Mesa Capital, the single family office that I represent as a shareholder of IX Investments. MultiGreen was created, And we have exceeded all of our goals for this first year in business. We thought we would be a success if we just did one transaction, and we are on track to do 4 transactions. And it all stemmed from that special night at the Stanford University Munger Graduate Building. So how does it feel to know that a social value investing company was created directly because of your influence?
I'm so proud of everything we're doing together. I really am. And you may have noticed our chairman of IX, Sarah Bloom Raskin, was, I think, ultimately finished just a nose. I'm a horse racing fan, just a nose behind Janet Yellen to be appointed Secretary of the Treasury under the new administration. So I'm happy that we keep Sarah as our chairman, but it shows you really, it's not just, guys like you or me, the guys in the trenches who are doing the hard work, but we have some like incredibly stellar and important people who share this excitement and this vision. And Steve too, you're probably aware, just yesterday, Steve became interim CEO of IX.
That is fantastic. I did not know that.
Yes. So, yes, our current CEO, who was the founder, has stepped back a little bit to be the chairman of the board and also to focus on 2 other of our platforms. And Steve is the person who brought us together, is the new leader of IX overall. And I would say, in my humble opinion, that the absolute best part of our conglomeration of incredible companies is MultiGreen.
Well, I am honored to be a part of it, and I am so grateful that you wrote the book Social Value Investing. It's been the inspiration for all of these companies, and we really are doing, making the world a better place, and we are a force for good, and it's fun to be a part of it. I want to dive into your book. You recently wrote this book, Social Value Investing. It's a first of its kind for value investors. How do you do it, in a socially responsible way? How do you make impact? How did this book come about?
Well, I'll try not to bore you and your listeners with the whole sordid story, but it begins in 2006, the year that Warren Buffett gave then all his money away, some small part to each one of his children for their foundations, but the vast majority, which is now, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 billion to the Gates Foundation as his kind of social value investment. And I thought it was great, but I didn't think that much of it really. And then that fall, I started to teach my course in effective management here at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University, which is a big class, 75 people. And I tend to be a somewhat mercurial professor. I think I know what I'm talking about, but I really try to engage students. And I was telling the story of New York's recovery, which I was a part of on the governmental side and on affordable housing. And even in its hardest times, I live and breathe New York City. And I was saying, I can't imagine why anyone would live in, and I had never said this before, and I've never said it since. I said, I can't imagine why anyone would live in Nebraska. And so I went on and on and on. This is the first class. So at the end of the class, there's usually a group of students who come up and I talk to one, talk to the other. And then this, right out of a Norman Rockwell painting, this, smiley-faced, freckled-faced, bright young man with a bow tie and a suit, which was not typical of the class, shook my hand and he said, "Professor, that was an incredible class." He said, "But I have to be honest, I'm from Nebraska and I really like it." And I was just, you know me, I'm a very emotional person. And my face just dropped. I felt so terrible. I said, "I am so sorry. I mean, I don't even know why I said that. I am so sorry. Please accept my apology." And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." And the next week, by the way, he brought me a Nebraska t-shirt. I still had no idea who he was. So he was Howard Buffett, my co-author, who is Warren Buffett's grandson, who is the Oracle of Omaha, Nebraska. So that was the beginning. And as the years went by, Howard and I became closer and closer. And by, pretty much 2008, we had this idea, and maybe your listeners don't know, that Warren Buffett's company is based on value investing, which he learned as a graduate student here at Columbia University. So we are the home of it, of value investing. And Howard and I said, we could take the principles of that and some of the management principles that I have learned and some of the practices at Berkshire Hathaway and put it together to give people a guidepost of how they can both make money and do good at the same time. And that is really the story of the book. And, Howard went off to work in the Obama administration on partnerships, and we had that information. And he went to Afghanistan, and I have been many, many times to India, in Brazil. And of course, I'm from New York, and those are many of the stories in the book of how cross-sector partnerships and social value investing has really changed New York and India and Brazil and even Afghanistan in the midst of a conflict. So
it's a tremendous story. There's one book that all of my children and my wife, everyone in my household has, and it's the book, your book, Social Value Investing. It's a part of our library indeed.
Randy, you'll appreciate this. I have to share this with you. One of my family's closest friends is a man named David Walentis, and you probably don't recognize the name, but he's today a person who started like me with nothing. He's a multi-billionaire, and he is the person who created Dumbo, the incredible real estate development in Brooklyn. And anyway, his wife just passed, and we spent the weekend with him. And we were talking about social value investing, and he said, "Get me that book. I want to read it." So, the idea of real estate being more than just real estate. That's been David's life, of creating communities here in New York. And I think someday people are going to be reading about MultiGreen just like they read about Dumbo today.
That would be so exciting. I am so flattered by that comment. In your book, you talk about so many amazing concepts and how it can be interlinked and cross-referenced to value investing in its approach. But one of the things that sticks out to me is this cross-sector partnership idea. So I don't know how to best put it into a MultiGreen structure, but as an advisory board member of MultiGreen, how would you like us to implement cross-sector partnerships?
Well, I think, Randy, this has always been in your vision, but let me, maybe put a little bit of detail on it as I see it. So we're building affordable housing for working income people, firemen, teachers, policemen, what we call, in the days of COVID, essential workers, people who earn a decent living, but in many, many communities around the US, there's nothing for them. And historically, their housing has usually been market rate housing that's aging, right, and getting older, and the people who can afford it are going to new housing units, and these a little bit worn at the edges housing is available to them. Well, MultiGreen is providing brand new, perfect housing that they can afford, and the partnerships, as I see it, are with local employers, so jobs are close. It's with environmentalists. One of your major themes from the beginning is contributing to or taking from the negative aspects of climate change by building sustainable buildings that not only are good for the environment, but are good for the people who live there and keeping down their utility costs. So those are private sector kind of partners, government partners, so that the strategy in terms of the land use and the community around them. So we fit in And we are an asset, which housing often is, but a planned asset. So we get cooperation from the local governments, and they help us and we help them. And then on the social side, community advocates. I mean, one of the principles of social value investing, the place principle, is that, too often we try to help people by giving them our best idea on what they need, instead of starting with, we want to help you. What do you want? So I know you have always been aggressive in trying to figure out and talk to people, both within the community where you're about to build, but also with potential tenants and people who represent them, so that we can, as much as we possibly can, fill the needs that they have, that they identify. So, government, private for-profit businesses, there's a very important management strategy called total quality management, which made Japan the dominant industrial force in the 1980s. And it's about really working with your suppliers and working with your customers to get the high quality project or good or car, like Toyota, which is the Toyota was built on total quality management, that an effective organization works with their suppliers to give them goods that are ready for them to use, the people who we will use to construct the housing, and to the people that they serve, so that we're providing them with the housing that they want. And I think that's what MultiGreen is about. That's how cross-sector partnerships fit in. And I can't wait till we welcome people to each one of the, I guess, 4 sites that you're pretty close to getting going.
Yes. We have 4 sites under construction now, and we will probably double that amount next year.
Incredible. I mean, just incredible. As a person who's been involved in affordable housing for maybe even longer than you've been alive, Rand, I'm sad and happy to say, we are, talk about Operation Warp Speed. MultiGreen's on warp speed. We're moving so fast. It's really exciting, because, affordable housing has been my life, and it's something I really care about. The one thing that always has been difficult for me is that from the time you come up with an idea till the time that people start living there is usually a 4 to 5 year process.
Yes.
And you have, we'll say, right? We don't have anybody living there yet, but you have really shortened that timeline. And we're all working together to keep it much shorter than that 5 year development process.
Bill, I don't think a more talented and capable team has ever been assembled to address this issue. And I do think that has helped our speed to market. And all of us have the same culture, the same thinking, and this cross-sector partnership is something that we are going to implement more of as we go into each community. And, well, I want to go back to one comment you said about the total quality management. That's a lean principle, continuous improvement. And that's all about MultiGreen. Every single day we're trying to improve our process and procedures. We've invested millions of dollars in our infrastructure and in our technology map and our technology solutions so that we can do that. And technology will be a huge force for good in the MultiGreen structure. So I love the fact that you brought up Toyota as an example.
I was going to say, make no mistake. I mean, this company, and you know this better than me, is about making money. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the United States for a long time and continues to be by far the largest and most successful economy in the world. And what makes me most proud of this country is that it continues to provide opportunities for people like me who come from less than modest means, to be successful. And being successful, again, the whole idea of social value investing is success and making the world a better place can move exactly together. And your commitment to lean management and efficiency has two really important components. One is we produce a better product for our customers. But the second is our margins are just as good, if not better, than people who ignore their customers, ignore the environment, ignore the neighborhood, ignore the government. So that's, kudos. You're not just fast and you're not just good. You're going to be extremely profitable.
And we're actually slowing down to go fast. We could have done way more than 4 projects this year, but we had to put our systems into place. And it's about process. One of your 5 points in the book, there's process, people, place, portfolio, and performance. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
So I want to focus on one of them specifically, and that's about process, because for a very long time internally, and most value investors say this following phrase, that process, they value the process more than the proceeds. And is process, going to this total quality management concept or even social value investing, is process a cultural thing? Is it a management thing? How can we get the process right?
Well, to me, process, we do 5 P's so people can remember it. But each one is a conglomeration of ideas. So process for me begins with strategic planning, of thinking about what your goal is, and then reverse engineering back to the beginning and figure out what is the best way to get to that goal. And that incorporates things like lean management, like reducing waste, like building in sustainability. So the process P is really about how are we going to implement this? And in many cases, for example, it involves partners, right? Sometimes it's a lot more efficient to partner with someone than it is to recreate the wheel yourself. So, if you look at, for example, Toyota and their great success, they had come in the 1950s, they came to the US and inspected Ford. And, Ford was totally integrated, right? They did everything. They even had their own rubber plantation in Brazil. And the Toyota people were, blown away by their scope and their breadth and their size. But they said to themselves, we could never afford to do this. And then they thought, maybe this isn't really the most efficient way to do this. And so they were really the first to start to think about the value chain and putting together a series of partners that come together ultimately to produce a great product. And I think that's what you've done since the very beginning. That's one of the reasons why you're moving so much faster than other people in the business. And again, ultimately, that's how I think you succeed, by doing good and making money at the same time. And by the way, cultural, no, I don't think so. I mean, maybe an organizational culture, yes. A ethnic culture, no.
Yes,
because
that's a good distinction.
As you look in the book, you see Afghanistan, you see India, you see Brazil, you see New York City, you're in Nevada, you're in New Mexico, you're in Washington State. So we're not talking about the culture of what ethnic background or racial makeup or geographic location. We're talking about a business culture, an organizational culture that reflects the values that we've talked about, which is efficiency, environmentally sustainable, affordable, partners, and really considering everyone from supplier to customer as part of the organization.
Well said. I really hope that MultiGreen can maintain and continuously improve on its organizational culture, because I know from the top down, if we can get it right, we can incorporate so many of these principles. And I want to ask you on this next question about methodology. So process and methodology are the two things that I really pulled out of your book. And in the social value investing framework, there's this methodology that requires, a process for investing in a program or a project. And, I think in your book it said something like implementing a variety of partners and focused on comprehensive and fully integrated cross-sector approaches. And from our perspective, we are totally doing the integrated design approach, the lean approach, and we're looking at programs or joint ventures that can be programmatic in long-term duration so that we can enter a city and have a larger amount of impact than we otherwise would have. Did you know that MultiGreen is using this exact search methodology that you propose in your book?
Yes, I do know that. As you know, that was a leading question. You know that I know that. In terms of methodology, it really is the 5 Ps. So it's process, which we just talked about. It's collaborative leadership. And, typically, I think people like you historically would not be considered leaders. Leaders were considered to be, the archetype was the big, tall, white man on a white horse who ordered other people to go get killed so they could win the battle. That's not leadership, particularly in today's world. Leadership is in large part not just about great ideas, which you have, and a commitment to success, which you also have, but it's all about being able to work with other people, right? To bring in your partner's ideas, to move forward collaboratively. So the methodology is the process. It is about collaborative leadership. It is about including the community where you're working so that you tailor the project to fit the community. And just stop for a quick second, a little bit of an example. One of the greatest things that could have happened to one of our boroughs here in New York, Queens, was the second headquarters of Amazon. And it was a done deal. It was signed off by Amazon. It was signed off by the governor. It was signed off by the mayor. And when they did their big announcement in the community where all these jobs were going to come and all this economic development, the people in the community went nuts, saying, how could you drop this project, 50,000 new jobs, multi-billion dollars of investment, and you never told us? And they protested and they went to the city council. And I think most people know the end of the story. Amazon pulled out. And it was a tragedy, really. It really was a tragedy because they didn't do what you're doing. And that is engage the community. So that's the place. And then very quickly, the last two of the methodology is tiered financing so that you have capital, high risk capital at the beginning. You engage people like me, professors and social organizations who contribute ideas and social context, community leaders who help invest in the project so that your risks, MultiGreen's risks, are lowered. You get help where it's appropriate from the government, whether it's in zoning alterations or modifications, density maybe, a variety of things in terms of hookups for water and sewer. And then your partners, your other partners who also contribute and share some of the financing load. And then finally, and Randy, kudos to you on this. You have been working very hard since the beginning of coming up with measures of success. And my Einstein in my life is Peter Drucker, the guru of management. And Drucker said time and time and time again, you can't manage what you don't measure. And you have been working from day one of developing an array of performance measures that you can share with the community, with the government, with your shareholders and investors, so that we know what we're buying, and we know how well we're doing. And you're never going to be perfect. So every time you see a project and you see its performance indicators, you can see where you need to work harder. And you can see where you need to model and apply the same successful principles in the next project.
Well, that is tremendous feedback. I really loved the tiered financing that you discussed today, as well as in your book. And who knows, maybe 10 years from now, as value investors, we always talk about finding equity bond-like investments. And now you're seeing green bonds and the proliferation of those in the capital markets. Maybe someday, I would hope that MultiGreen can lead the way with something like a social bond.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And as you well know, Randy, there is a lot of patient capital out there, right? Family offices are a very important component of that, but in some ways, the tip of the iceberg. Insurance companies, pension companies, there are trillions of dollars looking for investments that are long-term and that have social value. More and more, as you read in the book, millennials value social impact equally, or at least they say equally, with profitability. And they are going to inherit the largest sum collectively of transfer of wealth in the history of mankind. So there's going to be a lot of money out there looking for the kinds of projects that MultiGreen is developing.
Oh, that's really great insight. And you talk about impact. That's really how this book wraps up. And you introduce this concept of impact rate of return. And just for our listeners' benefit, that's lowercase I, capital R, capital R. That's a registered trademark. So this impact rate of return, specifically Howard discusses this in the book. But can you succinctly explain it for our listeners?
I hope so, Randy. I mean, it's a fairly complex formula, as you well know. But so what does it mean? What is it designed to do? It's I think, a very valuable contribution to the impact metrics. And what it's really designed to do is to enable people like you to compare a series of options in achieving a goal. Basically, it's not measuring, as you might measure capital, what's the greatest return on my financial investment? What's the greatest social impact per dollar invested? So it's giving you the kind of companion measurement to the various very sophisticated measures we have to measure how well we're doing with our money, to measure how successful our impact is. And you can do it, you being the user, you define what your measure of quality is. You plug that into the formula, and then the formula will tell you what is the most efficient use of your capital. What is the best way to go? For example, let's talk about sustainability. What is the most environmentally beneficial way of providing power to our projects? So there are a variety of options: wind, solar, regeneration, waste. What will have the greatest impact on that impact goal, sustainability, per dollar spent? And many times you will find there are examples in the book that talk about, as you know, I was deputy fire commissioner here in New York, and public safety is one of my my great passions in my life. In the book, we talk about an example from the fire protection world, whereby it turns out that getting the most expensive smoke detector system over time is the most effective way, not just in terms of saving lives, which is critically important, but the most expensive is actually the most efficient. That's not always the way it comes out, but that's what the IRR enables you to do. To figure out, for example, on sustainability, how can we get the most bang for our buck in terms of impact? That's what it does. So it's pretty simple.
I love it. And you're on our impact committee, and I believe we are one of the first organizations in the multifamily real estate world to ever measure impact, and specifically impact rate of return at each of our project levels. And so we're, of course, driven by internal rate of returns, which is a look back, but we're also equally just as driven by impact rate of return, which is both a projection and a look back. And it's really exciting to have you guys lead us in this regard.
Wow.
So thank you for doing that. I think we have 2 last questions here, Bill, and we'll get you off to class. I know you got to teach.
I do. I have class today.
So I want to do a little bit of a word association play here. So in the spirit of MultiGreen, what are a few of your favorite quote unquote green things?
Well, a couple, that come to mind. Parks come to mind immediately. You know that I'm on the board of the Central Parks Conservancy, which is a public-private partnership, cross-sector partnership, very much like we're talking about. It's about Riverside Park and Morningside Park, which are on either side of me here at Columbia and where my apartment is. It's about Ireland, because I'm 67% Irish, and my wife is 100% Irish. I immediately think of the green jacket of the U.S. PGA, right? And trees. Trees are one of my passions. I love trees, and they show to me the sustainability and just their beauty. And I think when you say green to many, many people, I think certainly like people like you and I, we think about environmental sustainability. I don't know if that's what you thought about when you named your company. But that was my interpretation, that as MultiGreen, in many respects, you consider your company positive. Green is healthy, right? Green is growth. And so far, at least, MultiGreen is healthy and it's growing. So that's good stuff.
I like when you said green is growth. That is profound. I'm going to have to write that one down.
Green is also money, by the way, right? Greenbacks.
Yes, greenbacks. Show me the green. That's great.
I don't know if you thought about that too.
No, it's great. There was multi-faceted reasons that we called the company MultiGreen, but at the end of the day, it was on the back of the napkin, and in our offices here in Henderson, Nevada, with Steve Oyer, Paul Aronson, and Per Lindstrom, we basically wrote down, 2 words. And I said, listen, the word green has to be in it, and you guys can name it whatever else you want. And I know we're doing multifamily, so there's been some names proposed that are MultiGreen. What do you think? And Steve Oyer is the one that named the company MultiGreen.
There you go. It's a great name.
It's growing on us. It's a lot of fun. So there's one last question, and we ask all of our interviewees to participate in this. It is now 2020. It's the end of 2020. As you know, MultiGreen started this year. In fact, we publicly launched from Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. And on that global stage, we announced that MultiGreen would improve the state of the world by constructing 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes. So, Bill, if you had one wish for MultiGreen, what would it be?
Well, since it's my last response, I'm going to cheat a little bit and answer in a little bit longer way. When you announced this in Davos, I think you know where I was. I was in Scotland with Prince Charles, of all things. You never know where you end up, right? At a conference which was talking about the many things that IX was doing and how they really dovetailed with what Prince Charles has dedicated his life to, which is building sustainable communities all around the UK. And so my wish is that I'll be at a conference 20 years from now talking about how MultiGreen has changed the United States, and maybe even, to think big, the world. Because without affordable housing, so many people who grew up with less than average incomes have a very low chance of success. Yes, they need education. Yes, they need a job. Yes, they need a breathable environment. But my father, who worked in a factory, always said, the one investment that a poor person can make that will change their lives is a home. And he strived all his life finally to be able to buy a home for us. And I think what MultiGreen is doing is providing that good home for people in a world where, frankly, again, we talked earlier about millennials. They prefer to rent. So maybe we'll see what happens in the future of MultiGreen. Maybe home ownership is in our future. But right now, the market is for rental. And that's a way that people can get into a decent home right away without a tremendous amount of assets on the side. So my wish is that we become the go-to model for affordable housing nationwide, worldwide.
Bill, you're such an inspiration. I am so grateful that we met that incredible day at Stanford, and it definitely changed my life. And because of it, we're going to improve a lot of other people's lives too.
Well, thank you for being my friend. It's the thing that means the most to me. It's the one thing that I think I know a little bit about, and it's really an honor for me to be able to play even a small part in MultiGreen's future. So thank you for having me.
Truly an honor, Bill. I'll see you in New York soon.
All right, buddy. I look forward to it.
Thank you for listening. Join us as we build 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes by 2030. And if you like the content you're hearing, hit the subscribe button. Follow us at Think MultiGreen and sign up to learn more at www.multi.green.